Next up at UFC 285, we have Julian Marquez taking on Marc-Andre Barriault in one of the closer fights of this card. There's a lot of massive favorites on this card. If this is not the closest odds-wise, I don't know what is. I think this is actually it. Julian Marquez is 9-3 overall, 3-2 in his last 5, coming off the KO loss to Gregory Rodriguez. Marc-Andre Barriault is 14-6 overall, 2-3 in his last 5, coming off the submission loss to Fluffy Hernandez. And this should actually be a very, very good fight. Julian Marquez is a well-rounded guy. He's got a solid chin. He's incredibly tough. He does tend to slow down as fights go on, but that's because he's out there throwing heavy, trying to make things happen. All 9 of his wins are by stoppage, and they're a mixed bag of knockouts and submissions. He's not typically like looking for a takedown and then working submissions. He is just snatching things up in scrambles, making things happen, just like falling into submissions, and it's working really well for him. Marc-Andre Barriault is a pretty well-rounded fighter himself. Solid kickboxing, decent takedowns. Jiu-jitsu's okay, but his takedowns, I said decent, but if he's losing the striking exchanges, he can't just rely on those takedowns to pull him out of that hole. He's typically looking to pressure forward, wear you down on your feet. He does have impressive striking volume with almost 6 significant strikes landed per minute. This is one of the closer fights in the card. Both guys are pretty well-rounded. Both are somewhat dangerous, but I think the bookies had it right when they opened this line. Julian Marquez should be the favorite here. I think he hits harder. I think he's proven that maybe his straight-up jiu-jitsu technique might not be as good as Marc-Andre's, but he's snatching things up. His MMA jiu-jitsu is working really well for him. So I like Julian Marquez here. Outside of getting knocked out in that last fight, that dude will come forward. He will bomb away. He's not going to quit. Go watch that Maki Pitolo fight. Like, he will make things happen, work, try to get it done, where Marc-Andre can fold under the pressure, where I don't see Julian folding under the pressure. What do you think, Jakey boy?
Keep going, man. I'm loving this, baby. Keep going. Keep going, baby.
That was it. That's all I had.
Oh. Well, listen, I'm glad that you said all that, because you should not listen to me from this point forward on this fight, because I think Marc-Andre sucks. I mean, they're one of these guys does not belong in the UFC, and the person that loses this fight probably does not belong in the UFC, and I think it's going to be Marc-Andre. Listen, his name is Powerbar, but he doesn't really have this one-punch power. He can get bullied around. I just don't see anything when I watch Marc-Andre that really jumps out like, oh my God, he does this really well. He's a decent technical boxer, but he shells up, right? And against a guy like Julian Marquez, when you're shelling up against the fence, Julian Marquez is just going to fucking unload on you. I mean, power shots, he will just let it all hang out against the fence, and he's got the power to put down a guy like Marc-Andre. And I'm glad that you mentioned, too, the no quit in Julian Marquez, because that's the X factor for him in most of these fights. You saw in that last fight against, it took everything Gregory Rodriguez had to put that guy out. I mean, he's hitting him with everything, and Julian Marquez like trying to run away, like, no, I'm still up there, I'm still surviving. The Maki Pitolo fight, that was another one that you referenced. That's a perfect reference. He was losing that fight, was getting out grappled at the very end, found a scramble and won with a submission, a fight that he knew that he had. I mean, he knew he was losing that fight, and he didn't give up. He's on there, he's working, he's tired as shit, found a submission win to get that fight. I think that he might use grappling more in this fight, because the reason I picked against Marc-Andre as my lock of the week with Jordan Wright was because this guy cannot defend a takedown to save his life. I picked Jordan Wright as my lock of the week. Jordan Wright started shooting takedowns, which looked like he was going to dominate that fight with the grappling. Marc-Andre found the guillotine. But you saw Marc-Andre in his last fight, get dominated again in the grappling by Anthony Hernandez. And Julian Marquez is another one of those guys that had to leave Krause, find a new camp. I think he's at Factory X or whatever. So when people leave camps, they find new coaches. Sometimes they bring out the best side of that person. And I think that is in the grappling. If he can mix in some takedowns, get in some scrambles, he can win those scrambles against Marc-Andre. But on the feet, I think he's got the power advantage. I think he's got the pressure advantage. Marc-Andre's going to shell up against the fence, and Julian Marquez is going to do what he wants. I love Julian Marquez in this matchup. As I mentioned, don't listen to me. I'm biased. I think Marc-Andre sucks. But Angelo kind of said the same thing I did, so.
I definitely see it the same way. Again, it's a tricky card because there's a lot of big favorites that should win. This is one of the... I think the opening line was correct. I think Julian Marquez at a minus 148 is a correct line. The public pushed it the other way. So he is now the underdog. You can get plus 130 on him. $8,000 in DraftKings. I think he's worth it. I wish he'd be a little more affordable. But DraftKings pricing is usually very sharp. Like, it's usually very sharp. It comes out after odds have leveled, and they're usually pretty sharp. So they realize how close of a fight this is, and they're not going to let the public sort of push it otherwise. But
people in the Discord, I see people in the chat right now will be like, the word on the street is Marquez is not training for this fight. He's not. It's like,
please.
Like,
They always say dumb shit.
I mean, you look at his Instagram. It's just like literally just all every day. It's just training. He's in the gym, just training. It's like that's the most nonsense. Like something just like gets out there. One person hears it, then the one person says it, and then the other person says it, and then it seems like it's a thing. It's like, get the fuck out of here. These guys are professionals.
Everybody wants to be a genius and have some wild insight. And, oh, my friend, if you had that sort of insight, you would keep it to yourself and you'd bet the shit out of it, a la James Krause. Right. So, anyway, every card. What was the one last week? There was some phantom injury last week. There was another one before that.
Oh, Josh Emmett was one with the hip or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up losing, but it wasn't a hip issue.
Right.
Well, maybe it was. Holy shit, these people might be onto something.
Oh, my God.
I'm flipping. Anyway, I think I'm going to spend the $8,000. Are you? Need underdogs.
Yep.
All right, done. Done. WeOwnPicks.com, full DraftKings slate information and leverage. Leverage is a proprietary number that helps you separate yourself from the pack. A card like this, you're going to need that leverage because there's going to be 4 or 5 people that everybody's going to probably look to squeeze into their lineup one way or another. So you can use the leverage to separate yourself from them. And the leverage is like a calculation that looks at the ownership projections and the scoring projections and then sort of puts those together to say, hey, based on how many points we expect this person to score and based on how lowly owned they're expected to be, we think you should put them in your lineup. So that's information that would probably be pretty helpful for this card, and it's only for premium members at WeOwnPicks.com.